ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new reaction and review. Tonight, guys, we're checking out a film from 1986. That movie is My Pet Monster. Now, some of you might not know what My Pet Monster is. My Pet Monster was a toy that was made back in the 80s. It was a small, blue plush toy that was modeled to look like a fanged, sort of horned monster. It was really cool. I never had one as a kid, but it always looked frickin' awesome, and it was moderately popular. So much so that it had an animated series, and it had this movie. Well, this barely counts as a movie. It's only about 48 minutes long, but I don't care. Now, I have to say this. I did have this movie as a child. I watched it about 4, maybe 5 times before our Betamax player flipped out and ate the tape. So, I have almost no memory of this thing. I can give you the faintest of plot, and I could be totally wrong on this. But I remember something about it. I remember something about a kid who's able to turn into the monster. I don't know, I don't remember how he got that power. I don't remember what exactly set him off and caused him to turn. I don't even remember what the fuck the conflict was. Just something about this kid could turn into the monster, which, honestly, even years later, that sounds really, really cool. Now, it's been damn near 30 years since I've seen this thing. I remember liking it as a kid, but I liked a lot of dumb shit as a kid. I have no idea if this thing is any good. I'm kind of hoping so, because I had to scour YouTube to find a decent copy of this fucking movie, and goddammit, I'm going to hope for the best here. And if it sucks, then, oh well, there's just another bit of poor judgment from my fucking childhood. I have no clue, guys, if this thing is any good at all. The only way I'm going to find out is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out My Pet Monster. I am going to say this, guys. The actual, monster costume looks awesome. In fact, it looks shockingly close to the fucking toy. That is... I completely forgot how good that fucking costume is, man. Looks really fucking cool. You know, guys, I honestly did not know what I was really getting into on this one, because it's been so long since I've seen this. But I am going to tell you guys, the writing here is incredibly sharp. I am really digging this shit, man. Hell yeah. You know, guys, I commented a few minutes ago about how the writing in here is really good. The fact that they just announced that Max turns into the monster because he gets hungry, that feels kind of stupid. And it doesn't explain why he turned back into a human when he was trying to tell his dad about his little physical issue. He hadn't eaten anything yet. You'd think he'd still be hungry. He'd still take monster form. Or does the whole change from monster to human just sort of happen randomly because reasons? Kind of hoping that they actually explain the second half of this whole transformation thing, but the whole he gets hungry so he turns into a monster, that just feels kind of stupid. Everything else in this movie is really solid, but that's kind of fucking dumb. Well, guys, that was My Pet Monster. Let's shut that off. Okay, so, God, where to start? I'm going to say right now, I went into this one with a whole lot of dread, because I have gone back and watched a lot of stuff from my childhood that I haven't seen in 20, 25, 30 years. Most of it sucks now. Okay, barring very few exceptional exceptions, most of it sucks. So I was sort of expecting this to be absolute trash. No, it's actually pretty good. It's flawed. I will totally say that this thing is flawed, and I will go into the minor issues as we go. But ultimately, it's not that bad. Why don't we start with writing? One minor issue which this movie has is the fact that it is rushing to get through through the story which they have. Partially that's because about halfway through we get introduced to a secondary plot that kind of takes over the main story. The main story when the film starts is that Max is turned into a monster by way of the stone idol, which is at a museum, and the scientist it is a scientist. The doctor, whatever the fuck he is, who actually discovered the statues, wants to capture Max to figure out the secrets of the idols and perhaps maybe unlock that kind of power for him for himself. Also partially because all of his colleagues think he's a fucking crackpot believing that statues can turn people into monsters. Now he has his proof. An entire movie of just Snyder trying to capture Max would have been great. And that is still kind of there. But it takes a backseat to the secondary story involving a dog. And it's that second half that it kind of suffers a little bit. It starts off, kind of strong, and then they introduce these corrupt friggin' dog fucking groomers who want to kidnap the poodle in order to enter it into a dog show because the poodle's a 3-time dog fucking show champion and all this other shit. And it really is nowhere near as interesting as the base story of this lunatic scientist who wants to capture Max for, his own for his own purposes. That was awesome. The stuff involving the dog felt a little bit weak. Now, I know why there is such a almost fucking auditory thunk between the two stories. It's because this thing was not simply a direct-to-video animated live-action movie. It actually was made as a 2-part pilot for a potential My Pet Monster live-action show. A show that never happened, but a lot of elements from this got turned into the My Pet Monster animated series. At least that's what a lot of the sources I was looking into said. I've never seen the animated series. I could not tell you a single detail from it. But still, what is here in terms of writing for story, it works. And I'm gonna say, it works especially well as a children's film, because where I, in my 30s, notice that there's a massive, shift in story between Snyder trying to capture Max and that falling into the background as we deal with this frickin' dog, while that's something that I notice in my 30s, someone who's 5, maybe 6, I think I watched this when I was 4, they are not going to notice that, and they're not going to care, and everything else here in terms of writing is incredibly strong, and it's going to keep not only children interested, it's going to keep adults interested as well. So this right here is actually a really well-made family piece, because it's not just going to cater to kids. It does have some really funny humor which even adults are going to enjoy. So writing here is fantastic, just simply on the grounds of it being a more family film kind of thing. That's awesome. And I just heard my phone chime. I don't give a shit. Anyway, writing here is incredibly good in terms of family films because it strikes that balance. And a lot of family films I've noticed, the ones that I cover anyway, have a hard time striking that kind of balance. Now, another minor issue, and this has to do with the runtime, is when they do introduce the story involving the dog and the dog show and the dog nappers, all of that feels incredibly rushed. And it feels rushed because they've only got about 15 minutes to actually tell that story. And they rush the shit through it. They are flying through it. And that's totally cool and everything. It's just, if they'd have maybe added another 5 minutes, even 10 minutes, they could have really fleshed that out more, and it could have been a little bit more interesting. I think that's another problem with the second half of this, is a lot of shit gets rushed through, and it gets rushed through badly. And again, that is something which a person my age right now, someone in their 30s, is going to notice. But kids are not going to give a shit. So ultimately, every single comment I'm making involving pacing and all that ultimately means nothing, because this is mainly intended for kids, and kids are not going to care. In fact, kids are going to love this thing, which is fantastic. I can totally praise it simply on that. Now, acting. Acting is where we get into a little bit of a mixed bag kind of thing. Because the kid who plays Max, dear God, his acting's all right in certain scenes, but then there's other times when he sounds terrible. His sister, who I actually know her name, she's played by Allison Court. She knows how to act. She turns in a fantastic showing here, and it is as good as the other projects I've seen. I have seen her in. In fact, the entire cast, barring the kid who plays Max and a small handful of background characters, those few people are a little bit iffy, and Max is not that bad. It's basically just like a line here, a line there is said really poorly, and it sounds kind of bad. Now, once more, that is a complaint coming from somebody who notices that kind of shit. Kids are not going to care. So once more, this honestly is more a point for any like parents or older siblings who might want to show this to a younger child. The acting is for the most part good, but there are a couple of lines that are said incredibly bad, and it's going to throw you off a little bit. So we do have that. Special effects. Well, I want to talk about that monster costume. It looks amazing. I have memories of what the My Pet Monster toy looked like, and if you were to try to turn that plush toy into a 4-foot-tall fursuit for a child or a midget to climb into, they basically nailed it perfectly. And what makes it even better is the fact that the suit, it actually has a mouth that moves, and it moves moderately well. It actually does kind of sort of puppet exactly what is being said. It's not perfect in most scenes, but it's certainly functional, and that's great. Again, it's been so long I had no memory of that suit looking... Well, then again, I was fucking young. I didn't notice things like mouth movements and eyebrow movements, and the fact that the eyes kind of sort of like dart around a little bit. It's really cool shit. And it looks amazing. And somebody who's older, who's watching this with essentially fresh eyes, will be able to notice that kind of thing and notice that it is really cool, considering the fact that, you didn't normally see that kind of thing from low-budget Canadian fare like this. By the way, yes, this is a Canadian film. I probably should have mentioned that. Going back over to writing for a second, I mentioned earlier in this video that I wanted to know if they would ever explain how Max turns back into a human. They never do. In fact, they actually kind of leave it friggin' hanging. Again, this thing was intended as a pilot for a live-action series. So that's something which would probably have been touched on in later episodes. Unfortunately, because there was no proper series that ties into this movie, you're kind of left hanging. And it's like, you want to know? Fine, fuck you. That's why. That's really the best we have, because there was no follow-up to this. It also kind of sucks because the movie ends on a little bit of a twist, which actually then turns Snyder into an even bigger threat in terms of villains. And again, in terms of like a live-action property, we never get to see a follow-up on that, and I have no idea at all if they follow up on it in the animated series. I may have to look into that. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that in writing. I didn't bother when I talked about writing. Back over to special effects. The suit work here is great, and the transformation effect is pretty good. It actually is all just like digital effects of like lightning and shit, and it looks pretty decent again for something with a modestly low, budget. This looks fine. It actually looks kind of solid, and it looks like the sort of thing that you could have done as part of like a weekly television show. It looked really decent. There really isn't much else to talk about in terms of special effects. When Max is turned into a monster, he has a boat. He has this whole suite of superpowers, including super strength, telescopic vision, super hearing. The effect used for his friggin' telescopic vision was sort of cool, where you basically get this like blue friggin' like aura around the screen, which sort of like spikes inward as it zooms in, and that looked pretty cool. Utilizing his super speed, was just taking the film, speeding it up. It looks kind of cheap and goofy. Again, children are not going to care about that, and children are not going to go, hey, they're just speeding up the picture. No, children are not going to give a shit. That honestly is more of a petty, quibble from someone who fucking goes and fucking picks the shit out of everything. I just want to make that point clear. Everything else in terms of utilizing Max's powers is fine, because the only other one he really uses is super strength, and that's just basically ripping friggin' doors off of hinges, or breaking friggin' like desks, breaking like desks in half, or snapping his steering wheel in two, and all of that looks, fine in terms of special effects, because there's not really a whole lot of stuff needed for that. Music. The theme song to this is a cover of Monster Mash, which is a song that I've always loved, and you probably heard as the closing credits were playing there. It also plays over the closing credits, and it sounds pretty good. And every other piece of music in here also sounds really solid. I mean, it's not friggin' great, and it's not going to blow away anybody, but what is here works, and it works exceptionally well. So I am going to say that music here is cool. I totally liked it. Our camera work was fine. Our lighting was fine. I do have to mention that because this thing came off of an old VHS tape, that the picture itself is kind of sort of grainy, but I am not going to call that a fault against the movie, because the person who uploaded it onto YouTube utilized a rather poor VHS copy, and if you stalk around YouTube enough, you can probably find a much cleaner copy. With that said, can I recommend My Pet Monster? Yes, I absolutely can. This movie was really fucking fun. I had a lot more fun with this thing than I honestly thought I was going to. If you happen to have kids and you're trying to find something to show them, go right ahead and show them this. It's fun, it's harmless, it's cool, it's gonna keep their attention for about 47 minutes, and then the closing credits hit. So at least it's something that will give your kids about 46 minutes roughly of fun. And if they really like that, then you can probably look for the animated series. You can show them like some of that. It basically is a nice way of trying to open up a door for your kid and introduce them to stuff that was out there back in the 80s, and who knows, they actually might really like it. I personally know that I had a hell of a lot of fun watching it, and I have a feeling that a lot of kids are also going to enjoy this thing. The movie is in no way perfect, but it is certainly fun. It is certainly worth checking out. And even if you don't have kids, fucking thing's only about 45 minutes long. I think you can part with 45 minutes and give this thing a watch. It's actually kind of decent. Now, I'm going to go see if I can find any episodes of the My Pet Monster animated series. I'm kind of curious what they did with that after they made this thing. So I'm going to go find those. I'm going to go see if I can find any episodes on YouTube or something. I'm going to see if those are any good. And who knows? Maybe I will keep this friggin' video like bookmarked, and I'll come back and I'll watch it again sometime. I probably will, because this was genuinely a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.